Welcome back to Tyson Goes Psycho, where the production quality is low and the content is even better. Today we're going to do an article review, so let's get cracking. The article we're reviewing is Parenting Styles and Child Behaviour in African American Families and Preschool Children. And there's the reference for the nerds. So the key questions we're asking: is punishment an effective behaviour modification strategy in children? And more specifically, do the effective parenting practices in European American families look the same in African American families? Now, this is an important question because a lot of psychology study is done on weird subjects, meaning they're Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic. And this can cause problems when trying to map those results onto other cultures. So, the parenting styles we're going to be looking at were noted by Diana Baumrind. They're authoritarian, which is strict, harsh punishment, low warmth, and no rationale ever given for punishments. The opposite is permissive parenting, where you shower the child with affection but really offer no boundaries to their behaviour. And authoritative, which is the balance between those two. There are still strict boundaries and high expectations, but there's also high emotional support and reasons given for discipline. So in general, research has found that the authoritarian and permissive parenting both make anxious, hostile kids in the long run, whereas authoritative parenting produces confident, well-adjusted kids. But is this true for non-Western cultures? Baumrind's research found that authoritarian parenting did not produce the same problems as it did in European American children for African American children. So we need to have another closer look at this phenomenon. So Jane Carrito, Tamara Warner and Sheila Iberg decided to look at this in more detail. They hypothesised that authoritative parenting would produce the same positive outcomes for African American children as it did in European American children. They didn't want to pursue the punishment route to see, why does it appear that that's okay. They wanted to look at the more explicit positive route. So they chose 108 African American female caregivers and their children, roughly half and half boys, some more boys. Average age was about 4.5 years old. They approached them in dentist clinics, so they're probably all too happy to distract themselves. 95% participated, which is great. They filled out 4 questionnaires, which are the Iberg Child Behaviour Inventory, which basically measures intensity of child misbehaviour. Parenting Styles and Dimensions measures how the parent reports what their parenting style is. Now, the African American Acculturation Scale was used. That determines how closely the subject identifies with traditional African American culture. And finally, some demographic questions such as income, education, etc. And all questionnaires were fully filled out, which is a great result. Speaking of results, drum roll, let there be maths. It's time for some terrifying maths. So the authors did a hierarchical regression analysis. They found the relationship between all of the major variables, and in general they found that lower education was correlated with lower income and an endorsement of either permissive or authoritarian parenting, whereas higher education, as we can see here, correlated with higher income, no surprises there, but also with a higher chance of authoritative parenting being endorsed rather than these negative correlations with authoritarian and permissive. So broadly, they found that the authoritative style did predict lower behaviour problems, as we can see there. And if we look, we can see authoritative parenting style is negatively correlated quite strongly with intensity of misbehaviour, whereas permissive and authoritarian are quite strongly correlated. And now this P less than 0.01 just means that those results are quite reliable. So in conclusion, after all the controls were filtered out, female caregivers who used authoritative parenting did report fewer child behaviour problems. So the hypothesis was confirmed. Authoritative parenting works for African American kids just as well as European American kids. Now, I like this study because it's elegant and simple. The statistical analyses are quite robust. There's no kind of hand waving or data dredging. Major potential confounds were controlled. For example, poverty. You could argue that poverty causes anxiety and aggression on its own without parenting style at all. So that was controlled. And it fills a gap, sort of puts the brick in the pyramid of knowledge. Some problems or potential weaknesses are that there was a high correlation between permissive and authoritarian parenting. And that should not be possible because those two parenting styles are mutually exclusive. Perhaps the instruments were not calibrated for non-Western cultures. Perhaps those terms meant different things. That needs further investigation. Additionally, the authors mention that the African Americans share parenting responsibilities, But this wasn't examined any further in the article. And I think that's important because Moon and others found that in Korea, teachers and peers significantly influenced child behaviour. Additionally, religion was not analysed, and I see that as a bit of an oversight in a cohort where 75% of them are likely to be religious. And we know that conservative Christianity typically endorses corporal punishment, so I would like to see an analysis of how religious belief influenced or correlated with education and which parenting style was endorsed. Future research, I think some directions are to look at, are Baumrein's elements of parenting simply weird? Do they map to other cultures, or are they a uniquely European construction? Do children from other cultures respond differently to different parenting styles, or are we misinterpreting those styles? For example, Baumrein found that what appeared to be authoritarian parenting in African American families actually had more elements of authoritative parenting when it was examined closer, such as the fathers were far more likely to play with their children, they were far more supportive emotionally, the mother and father were far more involved. So there wasn't that sort of cold distance associated with authoritarianism in the Western or the European American context. And this, I think, raises some important questions about the boundaries of what's determined as child abuse. When should children be removed from parents of other cultural groups based on a European American view of what proper parenting looks like? And we've seen the disastrous impact of that in Australia, where Aboriginals were removed from their parents based on a very rigid European view of what parenting should and shouldn't be. And so I think we need to examine further what the boundaries and relationship between these parenting styles are in non-European American cultures. So thanks for listening. That's all the time we've got, and there's my references. See if you want to look up the information for yourself. Bye.